In the last couple of videos, we've looked at the construction of a PPF, straight and curved, but we now need to think about how we actually use a PPF. One of the key things that we need to be able to do with a PPF is to demonstrate whether an economy or a business or something like that is being efficient. And the first kind of thing to say here that's really important is that a PPF can only show productive efficiency. Now, that may not mean a great deal at the moment. You probably haven't covered the different types of efficiencies, but it's really important that as you move through the economics course, you consider different types of efficiency. And it's very important to remember that a PPF can only be used to show whether an economy or a business is producing efficiently. It doesn't tell us anything about which is the preferred thing for it to produce or anything like that. All it's saying is it producing the maximum that it can? And that's what we mean by productive efficiency. So let's draw a PPF here and start to consider it. Now we'll use the generic PPF. So what we'll have on the axes then are good X and good Y. We will draw our more realistic curved PPF like this. And let's think about how we demonstrate whether this business is producing efficiently, whether this firm is at productive efficiency. Now, productive efficiency means essentially that it is getting as much out of its assets as it can do. The business is generating as much as it possibly can. So where on this diagram is it producing as much as it possibly can? Well, obviously, if it's producing here, then it's producing as much as it can of good X. It's at its maximum output of good X. It's producing none of good Y, but obviously this at that point it is productively efficient. It is allocating all of its resources, every single one, to the production of good X, and the result is that it is productively efficient. Let's say that this generates an output of 100. We'll just put some numbers on it to make it easier to consider. At the other end of the scale, we've got good Y, and obviously producing down here will mean that that we are producing as much as we possibly can of good Y. We are allocating all of our resources to the production of good Y. Let's say that enables us to generate 80 units of good Y. That is productively efficient. What about the areas in the line in between? So let's take this point here. Is this point productively efficient? Well, what we've got to think about here is, are there any unused resources? Are there any resources that could be used to produce something else? And there aren't at this point. So here, if we kind of draw some dotted lines across like this, we can kind of get a bit of an idea. So this is probably about 60 here, I would say, and this looks like that's probably about 60 as well, I think. So is that point there productively efficient? Yes, that point is still productively efficient. There's no way that we can generate more of one without giving up something of the other. So, for instance, if we wanted to generate more than 60 units of good X, i.e. we wanted to move up here, the only way that we can do that is to give up some of good Y. Move like this. That means that we are productively efficient at this point. So what we can say is the first rule to efficiency on a PPF is that all points on the PPF are productively efficient. That's the first thing to say. So what we need to think about now then are points which are not on the PPF. And basically there we've got two options. Option one is it's somewhere inside the PPF, like that blue dot there. Option two is it's somewhere outside the PPF, as in that red dot there. So we need to consider each of those points separately. So we'll start by considering the point inside. So what's going on inside then? Well, let's kind of mark on and see actually what outputs that's generating. That looks like it's producing about 30, and up here that looks like we're on about 40 there. So what we're saying is that blue point there, we are producing 40 units of good X, 30 units of good Y. Is that productively efficient? No, it's clearly not, because we can, with the resources that we have, we could produce more if we wanted to of good X. We could produce all the way up here if we wanted to of good X. If we were producing 30 units of good Y, so we could maybe produce, what's that look like, about 90 there? We could produce 90 units of good X if we were producing 30 units of good Y. Or alternatively, we could use some more of our spare resources to produce more of good Y. So what that means is it's possible from this point here to produce more of either good, or indeed both, without additional resources. That means we can't be using all of our resources efficiently, and therefore we are productively inefficient. So all points within the PPF are productively inefficient. And even more than that, we can say the further we get from the PPF, the more inefficient we are becoming. The further we are from the PPF, the more spare, wasted resources, essentially, we have. Let's think then about our point outside the PPF, this point up here. What's going on here? Well, what's going on there is we can't actually get there at the moment. We don't have enough resources to get there. We can't. That would involve us producing, what does this look like? About 50 units of good Y and about 110 of good X at the same time. And that's simply not possible. We don't have enough resources for that. So what we can say here is that all points which are outside the PPF are impossible. Now, if we're being technical, we actually need to add something on there, because just because they're impossible now doesn't mean they will always be impossible to reach. So what we need to say is that those points are impossible given the current resources and state of technology. Okay, so given the current resources and state of technology, any points outside the PPF are impossible, but in the long run, if the resources change or the state of technology changes, we may then be able to achieve that level of output. So key things then to think about when we're using a PPF to show efficiency. Number one, all points on the PPF are productively efficient. So any point which is on the PPF, doesn't matter where it is, either end or somewhere in the middle, they are productively efficient. Number two, all points which lie within the PPF are productively inefficient. There are wasted resources there which could be used for the production of one or other good. And the third point to remember here is that all points which are outside the PPF are impossible given the current resources and state of technology. And those are the three rules that enable you to demonstrate efficiency or otherwise on a PPF diagram.